So you think you've had a weekend? Wait till you hear about mine. Hi, hello, how are you doing? And otherwise, howdy out there in internet land. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome to the first day of the week session of Chattin on the Porch, a little live stream where we get together and talk about items in the news, see if we can't figure out what's going on, and either laugh or cry or both through it all. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. I am known in social media as the Front Porch Conservative. Sometimes I'm referred to as the beau in the chapeau. Sometimes I'm known as the fine fella in the fedora. But above all else, I am known as your host. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we are on Twitter. So if you haven't done it yet, send out a message to your friends, your frenemies, your enemies, your mothers, your brothers, your lovers, your sisters, your misters. Tell them to get in here. There's a funny-looking fellow in a funny-looking hat talking about the news. And otherwise, he's having a good time doing it. I think we can have some fun, too. Anyway, much thanks to everybody. Glad to see everybody here. We're going to let the crowd settle in on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter. And we'll get down to talking about what's going on out there in the world. And oh my gosh, did I have a crazy weekend. I had something happen that I never thought would ever happen to me in my life. And we get the music dropped, and I'll tell you guys all about it. It's been a crazy, crazy time for me, let me tell you now. And the news has been crazy, too. Okay, we have 199, and now we got the 396, so there you go. And Gypsy, what that means, I'm not sure. You're going to have to enlighten me. But anyway, because I'm a man, and I'm dumb. I don't know anything. So there you go. Anyway, welcome to this Monday evening session of Chatting on the Porch. We've got some items to go over in the news. We're glad to have you here. Oh, well, that's great. Good for him. Epic. I love Epic Mike. He's a good dude. He is a genuinely good dude. So anyway, we're glad to have y'all here tonight. We'll start dropping the volume on this thing. And yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I had a very crazy weekend. I always try to tell you guys in my audience what's going on with me, or as much as I think is appropriate. And I guess this is something of like therapy for what I'm about to tell you. I ran into a really interesting situation, not of my doing over the weekend. As most of y'all know, or some of you may know, I have a great nephew. He's about 7 years old. He plays Little League baseball. And he's on a travel team. So this weekend, he was at a tournament in an area about maybe 45 minutes from where we live. My sister, my brother-in-law, my mom, and obviously my nephew, his wife, and their kids. So we all, and go up to where this tournament's being played. And Saturday was great. Absolutely awesome. And Sunday came, and they were in the middle of their second game of the day. And off in the distance, I heard what sounded like I thought was firecrackers. Because I heard just pop, pop, pop. I didn't think anything about it. Well, all of a sudden, I heard a string of pop, 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 pop. And I turn and look, and all hell is breaking loose. There was a drive-by shooting that was taking place while these games were going on. Now, before anybody gets anything, just hear me out. The good news is there's a number of pieces of good news. Number one, no children. First of all, the drive-by shooting did not happen at the sports complex where these games were being played. So no kids were injured, no parents were injured. No one was fatally hurt. Police evacuated everybody. There was no just mass confusion and mass chaos, and the likes of which I've never seen. I've always heard about these stories, and I've been blessed up till this weekend to never have to be a part of any of this. What had happened was there was a shooting that had happened across the road in an apartment complex. And it was a drive-by shooting. We know, we've got an idea of who the suspects were. 3 of them have been apprehended. There's a 4th one still on the loose. And for a period of about a good 20 minutes or so, I was watching parents, children, grandparents run and hide and be frightened and scared. There was screaming, there was crying, there was everything imaginable. And like I said, I've never been a part of something like that in my life, and it was probably one of the most surreal feelings I've ever had in my life. And like I said, the good news is nobody was hurt. No one was shot, no one was killed, no one was injured. We had some scared parents because there were for a while there they couldn't find the kids, and fortunately everybody was accounted for, and we were able to get out. And it like I said, I've never been a part of something like that myself personally, and now I have, and it's one of the most surreal, frightening feelings in the world. Because I mean, I'll just give an example. There's my mom. She's watching her great grandson. She's 87 years old. It's not like she's just going to get up and run. And she's like, well, I am where I am. I can't move fast enough. Whatever happens, happens. And I went, holy cow. So, yeah, it was a very strange weekend for me in that respect. But like I said, the blessing of it is no one got hurt. No one got killed. But, man, you talk about some truly, truly freak out moments. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And in my part of the world, I mean, yeah, do these things happen? Yes. Do they happen around in my neck of the woods with regularity? Um, no, they don't. They don't. And like I say, we got to experience it, my family and I, for the first time in our lives, and it was just weird. It really was. It really was. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was no doubt. No doubt at all. Anywho, uh no, I have not actually. I have not considered that sea bass. I might. If you got any recommendations, I'll take them and listen to them. You always shoot them to me on Twitter. I'll take a look at it. Well, anyway, that was but otherwise, laying that aside, the games that I watched my great nephew in, he was fantastic. Like I say, he's a 7-year-old kid. He's still learning how to play the game, but my gosh, is he cat quick. Yeah. Oh, I very much agree with this. When you start getting used to it, that's the bad part. Totally. Totally. But yeah, my great nephew played fantastic baseball over the weekend. Otherwise, my family and I had a blast. Um, it was a good time. Sure, go ahead. Go ahead, dude. You're not gonna hurt my feelings in the slightest on it. Like I said, it's up to, I'm gonna tell you, you can submit it. I'll listen to it. If I think I want to use it, I'll use it. And if not, I won't. And I hope that you won't be offended, but just let you know. Anywho, we got all kinds of things to talk about tonight, but I needed to get that one off my chest. So thank you for giving me a moment to kind of talk that one out. So anyway, we got a lot of things to get into tonight by way of news. And yeah, we got a really good crowd here on YouTube so far, man. We got a bunch of people viewing in and checking us out. We got people over on Rumble. We got people over on Twitter. So we're glad to have all y'all here. And bunch of stuff to get into. The biggest news of the day. Oh God. The trial up in New York City. I thought last week provided all the fireworks and crazy as possible. Now, if you haven't been keeping up with what's been going on, right now, Trump's lawyers have been cross-examining Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney from back in 2016, and the star witness for the prosecution in their case against Donald Trump. Well, if you thought last week was nothing short of weird, Oh, yeah, Robert, I saw your comment. We're getting to that, brother. I promise you, we're going to get to it. It's just, if you thought last week and Cohen's testimony was damaging to the prosecution's case, kids, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because we got news of stuff he admitted to, and I'm literally, when I heard this at work, I'm sitting there going like this. I'm going, oh my God. This guy cannot be that big of a bonehead, but believe it or not, he truly was. Now, before we get to that, Judge Don Juan Quixote Marchand, he dropped a couple of nice little bombs this morning before the testimony really got started, and that is where we will begin our coverage of day who knows what number in this insane trial up in Manhattan. This is from Politico. A little snippet of news from Erica Orden. Court is in session this morning. We've begun with an update on the trial timeline. Justice Juan Marchand says it appears that the trial proceedings will wrap up this week, which I think is probably going to happen. But the closing arguments won't take place until next Tuesday, following the day off for Memorial Day. Now, this is a little bit weird. To me, this is a little weird because last week he told everybody, hey, get your closing arguments ready. You're probably going to be presenting them on Tuesday. Well, now the case on both sides is going to wrap up probably this week. Matter of fact, if they're not done by Thursday afternoon, I will be shocked. Okay. And now we're going to push off the closing arguments till next week. And I'm like, that's kind of nutty, but all right. So again, my assumption is the closing arguments are next week. Marchand gives the instructions to the jury and they start deliberating. We might have a decision by the end of next week, maybe the second week of June. I don't know. We'll see. So he dropped that little piece of news, and then he dropped one more that was really interesting. So let me back this up. So after Cohen gets done testifying, at that point, assuming there's no redirects or anything else, and there's no other witnesses, the prosecution will rest. And at that point, Trump and his lawyers get to present their case. Well, they'd already told the court there was for sure one witness they wanted to bring, and it was a former commissioner from the Federal Elections Commission. Now, this makes sense in light of the fact that, this case is supposedly about, accounting journal entries that were done with the intention of, fraudulently affecting an election, and therefore doing all this constitutes a violation of federal election law. So you sort of figure that having somebody who is an expert on federal election law, and better yet, a former member of the Federal Election Commission, you would figure you want them to be able to testify with complete thoroughness about what the rules and the laws are. Well, apparently Juan Marchand does not feel that is necessary. Check out this piece of legal brilliance. Again from Politico, this time by Josh Gerstein. Judge Juan Marchand has sharply limited what Trump's planned expert witness can testify about. Trump's defense wants to call election law expert Brad Smith to testify about federal campaign finance law, but the judge ruled this morning that allowing Smith to testify expansively on that topic would supplant the judge's role to determine what the law is. What? Huh? Come again? So, an expert on federal election law is not going to be allowed to testify because that would mean that the judge can't tell the jury what the law is, even though the guy getting up to testify is an expert on the very thing that the jury is supposed to know about. You cannot make this stuff up. I swear you can't. This is the most insane thing I have ever heard of. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, and we'll see. We'll see about, I mean, you might be right about all that, my friend. You might be very well right about all that. But this is nuts. This guy, Brad Smith, is a former member of the Federal Election Commission, not the commissioner, but a former member of the commission. This guy is an expert in election law, and the judge does not want him to testify, and I will read this again. The judge ruled this morning that allowing Smith to testify expansively on that topic would supplant the judge's role to determine what the law is. Quote, there is no question this would result in a battle of the experts, which will only serve to confuse and not assist the jury, Marchand declared near the beginning of today's court session. No, I think we need to reword Judge Marchand's quote. What that means is the jury is going to be able to ignore what I tell them they should know about the law, because there'll be a gentleman there who tells them actually what the law is. This is nuts. Absolutely insane. This is nuts. I tell you what, totally crazy. Absolutely crazy. So having dropped those two little nuggets of judicial news-making item, that gets us to the trial. And Robert Lowry, one of our regulars here on the Electronic Front Porch, has already alluded to it. The biggest shocker of the day that came out of the continued cross-examination Michael Cohen is the fact that he admitted to something. Does it surprise me what he admitted to? No. Does it shock me in one sense? Absolutely not. What shocks me more than anything else is the man just openly admits it in court. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, from thehill.com, let me set this up. Trump lawyer lands blow against Cohen on stealing from Trump organization. Article by Lauren Forza, Ella Lee, and Zach Schoenfeld. We've got the following. Former President Trump's lead defense attorney landed another punch on Michael Cohen on Monday, getting him to admit, now listen to this, getting Cohen to admit he stole from the Trump organization as the ex-fixer was allegedly being repaid for the hush money payment at the center of Trump's criminal case. Quote, here we go. Quote, you stole from the Trump organization? Trump attorney Todd Blanche asked on the third and final day of cross-examination. Yes, Cohen replied, without contesting to Blanche's framing of it. Cohen made the $130,000 hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election to stay quiet about her alleged affair with Trump, which he denies. Billed as Manhattan prosecutor's star witness, Cohen has served as perhaps the most damning witness against Trump in his first criminal case, implicating the former president in his testimony more than any other witness on his 34 counts of falsifying business records. Okay, I'm stopping right here because that paragraph is full of crap like a Christmas. The authors are just full of crap. I'm sorry. Anybody who has been following this case, who's been listening to people who are watching, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or on the right. Everybody's saying the same thing. Nobody's laying a glove on Trump here. Cohen is sinking the prosecution. Now, they're not saying it in those words. I'm sitting here reading between the lines, and I may not be a lawyer myself, and I may not be on law TV like some of these highly paid experts are, but even I've got the good common sense to know when a witness is actually working against your interest, and that's exactly what Michael Cohen is doing. This guy is sinking Alvin Bragg and Michael Colangelo every time he runs his yap. It's not, yeah, you can't touch, honey. You may have come up with Trump's theme song for this trial. Can't touch this. Whoa, whoa. And that's pretty much what's going on. You're not laying a glove on him. That said, however, I'm going to get back to a prediction that I made. We'll get back to that when we get done reading this. Let's get back to the article. And we've got the following. Each count corresponds to an alleged document generated in paying Cohen a total of $420,000 across 12 monthly installments. Once he paid off Daniels, Trump pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors say the total that includes multiple parts: a $130,000 reimbursement for paying Daniels, a $50,000 reimbursement for paying tech firm Redfinch to boost Trump's polling rating, doubling that subtotal so that it was grossed up for tax purposes, and adding another $60,000 for Cohen's year-end bonus. Todd Blanche pressed Cohen on how he only paid Redfinch $20,000 despite still asking for a larger reimbursement from the Trump organization. Prosecutors circled back to the Redfinch reimbursement during their redirect examination, asking Cohen why he asked for a larger reimbursement than what he paid the firm. Cohen explained it was very upsetting that his annual bonus had been cut by 2/3. I was angry because of the reduction in the bonus, and so it was almost like self-help. Oh my God. Self-help. Well, I'll tell you what, the next time, folks, that you feel like you need some help, some self-help, just remember, you can tell your boss, hey, I need a reimbursement for $50 and because I got to pay somebody up for something that we did, and you give that person 10, you keep the other 40 because that's self-help. That's not theft, it's self-help, don't you know? Woo, baby. My God. Let's continue. Just incredible. The ex-Trump fixer's testimony, now stretching into its second week, has spanned his early work for the Trump Organization to the 2018 guilty plea he ultimately made upon federal campaign finance and other charges. Cohen directly linked Trump to at least 22 of the documents the former president is accused of falsifying, testifying that 11 invoices he submitted to Trump were false records and the 35,000 monthly checks he received in 2017 arrived regardless of, quote, minimal work for his then boss. Trump's lawyers have insisted the records in question, which were labeled a legal retainer fee, were truthful. They have distanced the former president from the document's creation. The line of questioning about Cohen's stealing marked one of the few damning punches during his cross-examination. Again, these people are full of crap. Last week, Blanche blew up on Cohen, suggesting he was lying about his key phone call he claimed to have had with Trump about the hush money arrangement. Cohen also confirmed he helped coordinate 2 other hush money deals paid for by the friendly tabloid executive. The admission bolstered the state's greater theory of the case that Trump sought to have negative stories about him silenced to clear his path to the White House in 2016. To prove Trump guilty of the felony charges he faces, prosecutors must show his efforts to quash bad press ran afoul of federal and state election law. Well, good luck with that, because that ain't going to happen. Cohen is expected to be the district attorney's final witness before the prosecution rests. Then Trump attorneys will have the opportunity to put on their own case in the former president's defense, though they are not required to do so, and it's not clear they will. Well, I can already update that piece of information. They are doing it, and we're going to get into some of that here in a minute. But I want you to think about what Todd Blanche, Trump's lead attorney, got Michael Cohen to admit to. Cohen was skimming off the top of the Trump Organization. He paid this organization $20,000 and kept the rest of the money for himself. Unbelievable. It gets better, folks. It really does. And now, these 3 authors of this article for thehill.com are being extraordinarily generous, or maybe it's to say extraordinarily biased in their view of what's going on. Let me give you a little more level-headed view of what's happened here. From the Twitter page of Robert Barnes, crimes Cohen confessed to or otherwise admitted in evidence in the Trump trial: perjury, lots and lots of perjury, tax fraud, business fraud, embezzlement from Trump, theft from Trump, currency structuring to avoid getting caught for all the above. Ah, jeez. You know, I was talking to my buddy Smiling Jack today. He said, "Did you hear about Cohen's testimony?" I was like, "Yeah, I've already heard about it." He's like, "You know what the irony of all this is?" I was like, "What?" He's like, Smiling Jack was like, we got a guy on trial, and the wrong guy might wind up going to jail. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. I mean, Cohen is, to borrow an old Southern expression, Cohen is crooked like a dog's hind leg. Okay, this guy is just absolutely dirty. Yeah, no, and I agree. I can agree with this. He surrounds him. He makes some bad decisions when it comes to who he surrounds himself with. And yeah, I agree with you. You're not wrong. You're not wrong in the slightest on this one, Gypsy. But the mainstream media had some reaction to Cohen's testimony, and much like last week, if their reaction is any sign of how bad things were for the prosecution, like I said, Cohen wasn't helping them last week, and he most certainly didn't start off this week any better. We go to CNN.com and the reaction of their legal expert, Ellie Honig. Do me a favor, folks, and check this one out.
Okay. The way this was raised and addressed on direct is what Julia Louis-Dreyfus would call yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. I mean, here's what Michael Cohen said.
I think that was George Costanza.
No.
Was it?
It was Elaine.
It was Elaine.
Really?
Yeah. It was Elaine. Like, yada yada yada.
Let's debate it longer. I like this.
Here's the direct testimony. The way Michael Cohen explained what happened.
It's actually a girl that Costanza was dating. But okay, sorry.
Oh, there you go. Michael Cohen explained this whole thing, quote, "That's what was owed, and I didn't feel Mr. Trump deserved the difference." That's a lot different than I stole $60,000 from my boss on the transaction at the heart of this case. And by the way, the fact that he was never charged with larceny is important because stealing $60,000 through fraud, which would be larceny in New York State, is more serious of a crime than falsifying business records.
This is one of those.
Oh, my God. Even the mainstream media is acknowledging how bad this is. Did you catch that line? Yeah, larceny in New York is the worst crime than what Trump's being charged with. And this guy is the star witness for the prosecution. He has no credibility. He has already been a convicted perjurer. He has, oh my God. Now we'll get to something else here in a minute. Let's pop over to MSNBC and see what they've got to say about all this. Well, this will kind of crack you up. So the folks at MSNBC are no happier than the folks at CNN because they realize this case has the potential to be going right down the drain. Do me a favor, folks, and check this out.
Yasmin Vasugian, now we're talking about Blanche going into Michael Cohen's use of brown paper bags with $20,000 being taken to Redfinch.
Oh, and that's another part that cracked me up. He didn't even have the good decency to take the cash in a briefcase and be professional like that. Heck no. He looked like a wino hanging out on a New York City street corner. He was brown bagging the cash. Yeah, anyway, let's get back to what she's got to say.
Yeah, so let's do some math, guys, here on live television. I know it's taking a risk. None of us are mathematicians here. That's why we got into journalism. But let's do some math, right? We're going to take a step back, go back to that document, right? It was submitted into evidence. Number 35, it was that First Republic Bank document that Alan Weisselberg scribbled on, right? Grossing up Michael Cohen. We all remember this document, right? Pretty damning document for the defense, by the way. Grossing up that $420,000. Breaking it down, $130,000 for Keith Davidson, a.k.a. also Stormy Daniels, because he was her representative. $50,000 to Redfinch, which is an internet firm, essentially. And then $60,000 in bonuses to Michael Cohen, which he contends, by the way, was short what he was supposed to be bonused. He's normally bonused about $150,000. And then the rest would be grossing up for taxes. They are talking about specifically here the payout to Redfinch. Let me read for you the exchange between Todd Blanche and Michael Cohen. So you only gave him $20,000 and you took $30,000. Blanche, you stole from the Trump organization, right? Cohen says, yes, sir. Blanche goes on later on. He says, you did steal from the Trump organization based upon the expected reimbursement, correct? And he says, yes, sir. So again, that is breaking it out because essentially they walked through what it is that Michael Cohen actually paid Redfinch. And this goes back to, Jose, what you were just talking about, in this brown paper bag, all cash. He came to the Trump organization, an individual who worked for Redfinch, to collect this payment, $20,000, in which Michael Cohen paid out to this individual. The other $30,000 Michael Cohen kept to himself.
Oh my God. Yep. Yep. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable, these people. Oh, yeah. Yeah. My prediction, and I'm going to stand by what I said last week. This case is tissue paper thin. It is strung together with a bunch of assumptions of misdemeanors that have already expired under New York state law. It takes the theory that a NDA that was signed by Stormy Daniels and monies paid to her, if you string that together with federal election law, you have the attempt to subvert the 2016 election, and therefore Trump is guilty. Legal scholars on the left, guys like Jonathan Turley, Alan Dershowitz, others, people on the right, Greg Jarrett, others, are looking at this case, and they're all saying the same thing. This is the biggest load of horse manure that you could ever pile into a wagon and drag down the road. 34, 36, 38 counts, I think it is. Guys, as weak as this case is, and I would love to be wrong with what I'm about to predict, but as weak as this case is, do not be shocked. Do not be shocked if Trump gets found guilty, in spite of it all, in spite of it all, in spite of the fact that Cohen has committed perjury, possibly during this trial, despite the fact that Cohen has admitted he stole money from the Trump organization, despite the fact that his testimony has been shredded into fine lettuce, despite the fact that Stormy Daniels has nothing to do whatsoever with the question of these accounting entries. They're supposedly violations of election law, despite the fact that Donald Trump did not make the accounting entries, despite the fact that Trump had little to no knowledge of what Cohen was doing as far as how the payment arrangement was being made. Despite all of this, he's going to be found guilty. Trump will be found guilty on one of these charges. If he gets, and again, my hope is I'm absolutely wrong, and I will not be unhappy if I am. But y'all don't get shocked if come 2 weeks from now he's found guilty on one of these charges. Don't be shocked. Now, the fireworks didn't end with Cohen, by the way. Now, so they get done with Cohen, the prosecution rests. Now, everybody knew that that Trump's team was going to call Brad Smith, this former commissioner from the Federal Election Commission. When they asked Trump's legal team if they had any witnesses, they said, yes, we called Bob Costello to the stand. And when I heard that he was testifying, I jumped for joy. Now, for those of you who don't know who Bob Costello is, he's any number of different things. But more importantly, he is Michael Cohen's former attorney. A former attorney, might I add, that according to documents obtained by the Southern District of New York, and which are also in Bob Costello's possession, Cohen has waived attorney-client privilege, which means Bob Costello can say anything he wants with relation to Michael Cohen. So Trump's legal team calls Costello up to the stand, and that's when the fireworks started. And I take you to a tweet, which, by the way, there's a lot of good people trying to give you play-by-play of what's going on during the trial, and I'm sure you guys have found all kinds of good sources to follow if you're, trying to check out what's happening through the day. But I don't know how or why it's happened. But Andrew Giuliani, Rudy's son, I don't know if he's got somebody tweeting out the observations or what's going on, but he's been given like blow by blow, minute by minute happenings of what happened in court today. Let me take you to one of his tweets. Marchand says to Costello, if he doesn't like a ruling, don't roll your eyes or say geez or strike it. And if you don't like my ruling, don't give me side eyes. Costello says he understands. Marchand now asks if he's staring him down, asking loudly. Judge and witness leave the bench to go have what I'm sure is a spirited conversation behind closed doors. Well, it didn't just stop there, ladies and gentlemen. So they come back in after this conversation, and apparently something else gets said. At that point, Marchand gavelled everybody into silence, and he ordered everybody out of the courtroom. So the only people left in there were the prosecutors, the defense team, Marchand, and Costello. And apparently somebody got a dressing down. Now, I don't know much about Bob Costello beyond the fact that he is Cohen's former attorney. And, by the way, he's a former federal prosecutor. He himself used to work in the Southern District of New York's office there in Manhattan. But Costello doesn't strike me as someone who suffers fools easily. And his opinions about Marchand and this whole case are he's not hiding how he feels. So if he's being a little bit more than rowdy in the courtroom to Marchand's liking, I'm not surprised. And Marchand doesn't strike me as the kind of judge who's willing to put up with what he feels is insubordination. So the fact that the two of them are butting heads like this, I'm not surprised at all. And frankly, I think it's glorious because I think it's about high time Marchand get a taste of his own medicine. Marchand has shown no respect for the law. He's shown no respect for the judicial process. He's shown no respect for the rights of the defendant. He's shown no respect for the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, wherein he puts a gag order on Donald Trump saying what he can and cannot say about this case. So, yeah, I think it's about high time Marchand gets a taste of his own medicine, and I'm glad Bob Costello's giving it to him. But anyway, trial wraps up at about a little after 5 o'clock, which, by the way, keep your eyes open. One of the last things that happened before they adjourned for the day, Todd Blanche, Trump's lead attorney, made a motion to dismiss the whole case. Now, of course, Colangelo and Bragg and their people gave their arguments why it shouldn't happen, but Marchand's probably going to make a ruling tomorrow on whether or not the whole thing ought to be dismissed. So we'll see what happens. I rather doubt that it will, but okay. There's fireworks all the way around. So what kind of effect is this having for Donald Trump in New York City, you ask? Well, this is from the Twitter page of Simon Atiba from Africa News Today. Fantastic reporter, by the way. And I'm not going to put any volume on this. I'm just going to let you see it. Supposedly, and I only say supposedly because I don't know where this footage came from. Supposedly, these are people lined up outside the courthouse who are, trying to catch a glimpse of Trump's motorcade. Check this out. Hundreds of people just line the streets. Pretty daggone cool, if you ask me. Now, that kind of gets to something else that's going on, and it transitions us to another piece of news that happened. Remember how I said that the worst mistake that the Democrats made is that they nailed Donald Trump's foot to the floor in New York City for about 5 or 6 weeks? And that's about like the equivalent of letting the fox loose in the hen house. Well, last Thursday, it was announced that a rally was going to take place in New York City. Now, this is not necessarily a surprise to anybody in that, people have been saying that Trump ought to do some campaigning in New York City. I'm one of them. My philosophy is, look, if you're going to make the guy stay up there, if I were Trump, I'd absolutely go ahead and campaign everywhere I can. But it's where in New York City that he's going to campaign that is such a shock to everybody. He's not going out to Long Island. Long Island's been held for a very, very long time as kind of like the Republican sort of bastion of the 5 boroughs. Oh no, Trump's going right into the heart of it all. He's going to the Bronx. This is from the New York Times. Check this out. The former president, who has sought to make some political appearances around New York as he stands criminal trial, is set to speak at an event next Thursday at Crotona Park. Article written by Katie Gluck and Maggie Haberman. Former President Donald J. Trump, who has spent much of his time recently as a criminal defendant in a Manhattan courtroom, will be in a different New York borough next Thursday when he will hold a campaign event in the Bronx. The gathering is scheduled to take place at Crotona Park. His campaign announced in a statement Friday evening, declaring that Mr. Trump would, quote, ease the financial pressures placed on households and reestablish law and order in New York. It is an unusual location for a Republican presidential campaign. The area went for President Biden by about 77% in 2020. And despite a shift to the right in some of New York State's congressional districts and neighborhoods, including the Bronx, in recent years, the state as a whole is not considered a general election battleground. But Mr. Trump's aides have been discussing an event in the South Bronx for weeks. The gathering, they said, would not be a traditional rally. The idea has been to make appearances around New York City during Mr. Trump's required attendance at his criminal trial in Manhattan on charges that he falsified business records to cover up a hush money payment to a porn star during the 2016 presidential election. Last month, in his first campaign stop since the start of the trial, Mr. Trump visited a bodega in Harlem, attacking the district attorney prosecuting him and casting himself as tough on crime. The former president has told donors at a Manhattan fundraiser this week that he was planning something in the South Bronx, making a joke he might get hurt in the neighborhood. Quote, we're going to have a tremendous rally. You may never see me again, he said, prompting laughter, according to an attendee who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe the private event. That could be a tricky one. Representative Richie Torres, a New York Democrat who represents the South Bronx, wrote on social media that the area had, quote, no greater enemy than Donald Trump, casting him as a threat to the social safety net on which the Bronx families depend for their survival. Quote, the South Bronx, the most Democrat area in the nation, will not buy the snake oil that he is selling, Mr. Torres wrote. Respectfully, I disagree, Mr. Torres. You better be careful, because if Donald Trump gets the same kind of attendance at a rally in the Bronx that he got in Wildwood, New Jersey, you guys ought to be scared crapless. Now, do I think he's going to get 75 or 100,000 people at this Crotona Park? I have no idea. Don't know how the place is laid out. I don't know how big it is. Who knows? But I know this much. Ever since that announcement took place, there have been, how do I want to put this? Warm-up events that are taking place in and around the Bronx, and I'll show you some of them. I think this is really interesting. Here's a parade that was being held, I guess, on Saturday in the Bronx. I'm not going to put any volume to this, but just to give you an idea, you've got African Americans, you've got Latinos, you've got the old, you've got the young, and they're marching in the streets saying the South Bronx is for Donald Trump. Now, again, I think that may have been Tina Forte, candidate in the Bronx who's running against AOC. But you're seeing signs going up. You're seeing people speaking out. I'm telling you right now. Actually, it's Thursday. It's this Thursday. So, don't be terribly shocked at this, y'all. I mean, look, do I think that Donald Trump is going to win New York State in November? As much as I would love to see it happen, I got to be straight up with you guys. I don't think he will. Do I think he could make it amazingly close? Oh, yeah. That for sure could happen. You take inflation, you take immigration, you take crime, you take all those factors, you add them together in New York State. Plus, on top of that, you add in a trial where New Yorkers, regardless of which of the boroughs they live in, Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, Harlem, Long Island, doesn't matter. They're seeing this guy being put on trial for something that most people would, common sense, are looking at saying, what in the world is this guy being put on trial for? And even if they weren't looking at it from that light, okay, they'd also be looking at it as, why are you having one of the leading candidates for president on trial in an election year? You know, I've always said, and I've said it on more than one occasion on this live stream, the American people may not be, totally up to speed on minutia details of every issue that's going on in America or around the world, but the American people are blessed with an inherent common sense. Or put another way, they can smell BS 100 miles off. They know when someone is BSing them. Okay? So exactly. Black Lives MAGA. Take that. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I agree with you completely. Depending on how this rally goes and how it's structured, this could get fascinating to watch. Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Let me see if I've got any other clips to show you. Yeah, here's another one. Let's run. I'm not going to put any volume to this, but you got people demonstrating in local parks, and this thing isn't even taking place yet. And they're already rallying in one form or another on behalf of Trump in the Bronx. This is crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm tickled to death. I'm glad to see it happen. But this is just extraordinary. And why is he going into the Bronx? Heavy populations of African Americans and Hispanics. And statistically speaking, I mean, what Democrats are saying is correct, and what the New York Times is saying is correct. I mean, the Bronx is probably one of the most Democrat areas in not just New York City or New York State. We're talking the country. Okay? Joe over on Rumble says the Republican candidate for governor in 2022 received 22% of the vote in the Bronx, which is almost double what a Republican gets there. So something's I agree, Joe. I agree with you completely on this one, brother. I absolutely agree. So, I mean, who was I watching this morning? Oh yeah, it was Alex DeGrassi. He works as an aide in U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik's office. Stefanik is a Republican from New York State. And he made a very interesting and I would otherwise say outrageous claim. And it's this. If Donald Trump were to get, say, 30 to 35% of the vote out of the whole of the 5 boroughs, if I understood what DeGrassi was saying, if I understood him correctly, if Donald Trump got 30 to 35% of the vote combined out of the 5 boroughs, he takes New York State. Now, Lee Zeldin was one of the hardest working candidates I've seen in New York State in a long time. And I'm not busting on Lee Zeldin, so don't get me wrong here. Lee was great. He ran an absolutely magnificent campaign. But he was running it in a place that was absolutely calcified. That's how long the Democrats have been in control. Lee Zeldin is not Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is not Lee Zeldin. I'm not saying Trump's going to get that 30 or 35% out of the 5 boroughs, but I'll tell you one thing. If I'm Trump and his people, as often as you can, I mean, look, there are certain states he's got to concentrate on, okay? I get that. You got to concentrate on Pennsylvania. You got to concentrate on Michigan. You got to concentrate on Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, okay? But as often as he can, take a swing into New York State somewhere. Take a swing into New York City. And don't just stop there. Make a run into Virginia. Make a run up to New Hampshire. Go up to Maine. Go make Joe Biden go on defense. It frustrates me to no end. As somebody who has watched American politics for years. The lack of creative thinking on the part of the Republican Party when it comes to the Electoral College map. They don't ever think about expanding the pie. The Democrats are always working on it. And they're pumping money into Texas. They're pumping some money into Tennessee. They're pumping money up into New Hampshire and Connecticut. All these places. I've watched this for years. And it's worked. Takes a little bit of time, but the Democrats understand how this works. You put enough time and money into a state, and little by little, sooner or later, you're going to flip it. And sure enough, they've done it over the years. Illinois used to be a reliably Republican state in presidential elections. Not anymore. Jersey used to be competitive. Not anymore. Connecticut used to be a reliably Republican state. Not anymore. Vermont, same thing. So the Democrats understand this. Republicans don't. Until now. I agree with you. I'm not trying to jinx it. And I'm not trying to, I'm just telling you, there's stuff happening out there. There's a lot of work to be done between now and November, and I get that. There's got to be a lot of doors knocked on and phone calls made and text messages sent and emails sent, and driving people to the polls and getting somebody an absentee ballot, whatever. I get it. I'm just telling you, there's stuff going on out there. There are going to be states on election night. Yeah, they still might stay in the Democrat column, but they're going to be a whole lot closer than people realize. Tell you what, now might be a good time for a commercial before we get on to some other topics, so let me do that. If you're stopping by, and apparently we've got a nice little healthy bunch of folks viewing on YouTube and a good bunch of folks on Rumble. If you're here for the first time, my name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. This is Chattin on the Porch. We get together and talk about items in the news. If you're not here and you're here for the first time, if you're not here, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you've never been here before, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. It would really help me out. But more importantly, if you're not a subscriber to my channels, please subscribe. You would really help me out a great deal. I would genuinely appreciate it. We are a going little concern, and we'd like to be a going big concern before it's all over with. So hit the thumbs up on Rumble, hit the thumbs up on YouTube, and subscribe on both places. And, share the links around everywhere you can. Glad to have all you here tonight. Now, I mentioned states that Donald Trump ought to go into, if for nothing else, to put the Democrats on defense. Well, one of them that he's making a play for is Minnesota. Now, on its face, Minnesota makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. A Republican has not carried Minnesota since 1972. It is one of the most reliably Democrat states in the entire country. Okay? But Trump's making a play for it. Now, if you think back to 2016, you can kind of understand why. He got within 1.5 points of flipping Minnesota. He only did one rally in the state. That was an airplane rally with like 3 days to go. He went an airplane hangar rally. The jet, Trump 1 flies in, he, does the long walk down the whatever you call it, the walkway, does a rally at an airport hangar, gets back on the plane. Looking back on it, I bet you the Trump campaign wishes they'd have spent more time in Minnesota, but this time they're willing to do it. So on Friday, Donald Trump was invited by the Minnesota Republican Party to go up to St. Paul and give a speech. Okay, cool. No problem. I want to play you some excerpts from that speech because, and I'm not trying to excuse him for anything that he is or is not, but I will say this about Donald Trump. For a man that is really carrying the world on his shoulders in terms of all these cases around the country, and you got the Democratic parties after you, and you got, he really has a remarkably good sense of humor about it all. And if you want an example of what that looks like, we've got some excerpts from the speech. And if you have not seen these are absolutely hysterical. So, folks, do me a favor and listen to some of this.
But Americans are not struggling. You know, this is the worst platform.
Now, let me also back up. Notice that there's only one teleprompter. The reason that there's only one teleprompter is the other one fell over. That's why he's saying, who put this stage?
Put this stage up here. This is the worst. The frickin' place is falling down. It keeps tilting further left. Like too many other things. What a crappy contractor this was. He's all about disinformation. Pilots come in, he said, I used to fly a plane. Truckers come in, I used to drive a truck. People come in from Minnesota. I used to live in Minnesota. Right? He is so full of shit, this guy. Terrible. No, I have fake Tapper as they said, I just want to debate this guy, but you know, and I'm gonna demand a drug test too, by the way. I am. No, I really am. I don't want him coming in like the State of the Union. He was high as a kite. Is that Joe up there? A beautiful row? And by the end of the evening, he's like, well, it was exhausted, right? You know, it's a funny thing. I don't know if you can see it out there. Does anybody have good eyes out there? Because this is, okay, so I just got this today. Somebody handed it to me. So weird, and not as a joke. I said, anybody have any Tic Tacs? And the guy said, yeah, I have one. Look at the size of that sucker. Can you see that, Pete? This is called Biden Tic Tacs. Can you see it, Tom? This costs more money than the one that was like 10 times bigger. This is inflation. That's a perfect. The guy actually handed me, do you have any Tic Tacs? Yeah, here, take mine, sir. I said, what the hell is that?
Now, I have a question for y'all. Okay. Like Trump, don't like Trump, whatever. And I'm going to ask you this. Does anybody really think that Joe Biden could ad-lib the way Donald Trump did in that speech? Now, again, if you don't like Trump, that's fine. I'm asking a straight up, honest question, and I'm not even trying to to make a bad comment about Joe Biden necessarily. But I want you to think about these two men. One of them's 81, the other one's 77. Okay, Biden's obviously the 81. Okay. Does anybody really think that Joe Biden, if half the teleprompter set fell down and the podium starts to lean over, whatever, does anybody really think that Joe Biden could ad-lib his way through that stuff and have the crowd cracking up? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Trump's just extraordinarily quick on his feet. Yeah, and I'm like you, Gypsy. I'm like you. I didn't realize that was a miniature Tic Tac container till I finally. I just now realized it. It just. There is no way. I'm sorry. There's no way that that Joe Biden could ad-lib that fast. Which might explain some of what came out today. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but I want to share this with you. I think you'll get a kick out of it. This came out about 10:30 this morning, maybe 11 o'clock. Here are some new poll numbers from Harvard Harris. It shows with leaners, in other words, not giving anybody the option to say, well, I'm undecided. It's like, no, if you got to choose, what are you doing? Trump has cracked 50% in the latest Harvard Harris poll. and he's got a 6-point lead nationwide. Now, again, I had the caveat, it's a long way from here to November. Okay. But just keep your eyes on this. Now, one other piece of news kind of came out that's campaign related. Well, maybe not campaign related, but I think this got dropped at some point today, and the reaction to it was pretty good. Someone, I guess, either asked Trump or somehow or another the subject of who would you pick for your attorney general. And there's a name that came up. Ken Paxton of Texas. I'm not going to lie. I am torn on this. There's half of me that recognizes the fact that Ken Paxton is probably one of the most brilliant attorney generals in the country. Okay. Would he be deserving of it if Trump nominated him as attorney general for the United States? Yeah. This guy is a brilliant lawyer. There's another half of me that says I don't want him to get it. Now I'll tell you why. Because if there's a legal challenge out there somewhere, or a legal challenge needs to be filed, then you need somebody in a very friendly jurisdiction to do it. And when it comes to the Fifth Circuit, Ken Paxton has been very successful in Texas. So, I mean, yes, he's worthy of it. No, I don't want to see him go. So I am torn on this. But if he gets nominated, ain't going to hurt my feelings in the slightest. Now, we know what Trump was doing over the weekend. He was giving speeches and running around and such like that. Well, Biden was also giving a speech, or actually a couple of them. But the one that got the most attention was a speech that he gave at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And I've seen some of y'all in chat, you've already been mentioning it. So Trump is upbeat, he's laughing, he's having fun, he's, enjoying the crowd, they're enjoying him. Biden, on the other hand, he might be giving a commencement address, but he's really preaching a funeral. That's about the somberness of his tone. I want to play you one excerpt from that speech, and it's drawn a lot of attention. You guys may or may not have seen it. But if you haven't, I think you're going to be in for not necessarily a surprise, given the language that Joe Biden's using, but I think the tone might surprise you. So do me a favor. This is Biden at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia on Sunday. Do me a favor and check this out.
Today, you missed your high school graduation. You started college just as George Floyd was murdered, and there was a reckoning on race. It's natural to wonder if democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy? If black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? The trail of broken promises still leave black communities behind. What is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. Most of all, what does it mean, as we've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
Wow. That was probably some of the most tepid applause that I've ever heard. Oh, man. Yeah, a 5 people clap. That's about what he got. Now, I will tell you right now, I did not hear the whole speech. I was a little busy watching baseball and trying to avoid drive-bys. But anyway, yeah, Gypsy, you nailed it, dear. You nailed it. There is nothing unifying about that speech, or at least that clip. There is nothing in that speech that's unifying. There's nothing that brings people together. It's pandering. Yeah, Robert, yeah, you absolutely make a fantastic point. If that speech would have been given in the 50s or the 60s, yeah, I agree with you. But this isn't the 1950s and 60s. These aren't the days of Bull Connor and George Wallace. These aren't the days of Little Rock, Arkansas, or Selma. These aren't the days of the March on Washington. It just, yeah. That's a good way to describe it, Z Highness. It really is a really bitter taste. And by the way, we're sitting here, you know, having that same kind of visceral sort of reaction to this, and that's a 1 minute clip, and we're just all sitting there going, ew, you know, we're all feeling the same way, and it just really like, it feels bad. It really does, you know. Yeah, no emotion. And what emotion is there is hate and bitterness and just, oh, well, we're not the only ones that feel this way, for the record. I found a column written by an author, and I've actually been on a live stream with him before, that was hosted by Daniel and Brentley from the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast. But he wrote a piece for the New York Post. Yeah, that's a good point, dear. That's a real good point. But Adam B. Coleman, and keep your eyes on this young man. He's going places. Very smart commentator. I want to read part of this. This is his response column in the New York Post. Joe Biden is right. Black people are treated as negatively different, inferior, and undeserving of being seen as equals. The culprit of such behavior? Joe Biden himself. He's incapable of speaking to black people without reminding us of past plights, or ones that we're supposedly dealing with today, as an emotional ploy to leverage our votes. Ooh, that's good. I mean, not what he's describing, but the way he's describing it. God, that's eloquent. Worse, even in the face of success and celebratory triumph, like graduating from college, Joe Biden is unable to let us have our moment to reflect on what we're capable of doing. Instead, he patronizes, telling us what he believes we won't be able to achieve. On Sunday at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Joe Biden gave a campaign speech that was masquerading as a commencement address. It was littered with identity politics, black trauma narratives, and an emphasis on how our existence is determined by how much we struggle and how much we must endure. Quote, the pandemic robbed you of so much. Some of you lost loved ones, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters who aren't able to be here to celebrate with you today. You missed your high school graduation. You started college as George Floyd was murdered, and there was a reckoning on race. It's not, and he goes on to quote the other part we just looked at. Adam B. Coleman says the following: I don't throw statements like this around often because I take them very seriously. Joe Biden is a racist. As a matter of fact, he's the worst type of racist because he pretends to be your friend while pulling you back every time you attempt to move forward. He's the friend who only calls on you when he wants something and is never there for you when you're in need. Joe Biden only showed up at Morehouse and other meetings featuring black people because his polling numbers among black Americans are decreasing and he needs us again to stay in power. But every time he shows up and speaks to us, He can't help himself. He's the black cloud ready to rain on our parade, or in this case, our graduation. Biden talks about blacks and loving this country when it doesn't love you back, but the only relationship I see lacking love is coming from Biden, not America. Joe Biden doesn't like or love black people. He has made that clear when he declared our identity is contingent on if we help him get power back in 2020. Quote, if you're having a problem figuring out whether you're for me or for Trump, then you ain't black, he famously said. I'll tell you what, like I said, you keep an eye on Adam B. Coleman, because that young man's going to go places. That is probably one of the finest indictments of Democrat behavior toward African Americans that I've read in a really long time. That was good. And I'm not just saying that because he's taking on Joe Biden. But take out Joe Biden, put in the name of any other Democrat politician. Isn't it true? Doesn't it seem like the only time the Democrats actually care about African Americans is when the election's rolling around? Just absolutely amazing. It really is absolutely amazing. Well, he did get some reactions that he wasn't expecting. That is Joe Biden. Let me show you a headline from Breitbart. Students turned their back on Biden during commencement speech at Morehouse College, MLK's alma mater. Article by Christina Wong. Some students turned their backs on Joe Biden as he delivered a commencement speech Sunday at Morehouse College, a historic black college and Martin Luther King Jr.'s alma mater. At least 3 Morehouse graduates could be seen in photos with their backs turned, according to a Twitter post by a pro-Trump super PAC. One of them wore a keffiyeh scarf to signal solidarity with Palestinians. The press pool traveling with Biden acknowledged seeing one student who stood at the back of the ceremony with his back turned and his right fist raised. According to the pool, a few graduates and faculty staff were wearing keffiyeh scarves. Yeah. Yep, that's a good point, Zippy. That's a real good point. Really good point. Well, I'll tell you what. Let us shift gears a little bit, and I'll do one last commercial before we get into our last story. My name is Brian Tripp, and I'm the Front Porch Conservative. This is Chattin on the Porch. We're looking at some items in the news. We're glad to have everybody here. And wonderful group tonight. Seabass, Zippy, Gypsy's here. Small Time Republic is here. Robert's here. Am I missing anybody? Dave is here. Wonderful group of people. Z Highness and others. And over on Rumble, we've got Joe. We got those lovable lurkers over there. Daggone you Rumble lurkers. I love you, but y'all know you can say stuff, right? Anyway. There's been a controversy that's kicked up recently, and I guess now's about as good a time for us to talk about it as anybody else, because I know everybody out there in America is getting into it. Have y'all heard about the Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker? I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. If I'm not, somebody straighten me out. Harrison Butker. Harrison Butker is a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, an NFL football team. He is also Roman Catholic. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. No problem. Now, before we play Butker's comments, or parts of them anyway, I want to contrast it with an interview that Pope Francis recently gave to the folks at 60 Minutes. And there's a clip that's been running around the internet for a while. And I want you to see this, and then we're going to play Butker's comments. So this is from the interview on 60 Minutes with Pope Francis, and Nora O'Donnell asks him the following. Check this out.
When you look at the world, What gives you hope?
Todo.
Everything.
Uno ve tragedias.
You see tragedies,
pero ve
but you also see so many beautiful
tantas
things.
cosas lindas. Uno ve madres heroicas.
You see heroic mothers,
Hombres heroicos.
heroic men who
hombres
have
que
hopes
tienen
and
ilusión,
dreams,
mujeres que miran
women who
adelante.
look to the future.
Eso a mí me da
That
mucha
gives me a lot
esperanza.
of hope.
La gente quiere vivir.
People want to live.
La gente
People
va
forge
adelante.
ahead. And people
La
are
gente
fundamentally
es
good.
fundamentalmente buena. Todos somos
We are all fundamentally good.
Por ahí somos un poco
Yes, there are
pícaros,
some rogues and
pecadores,
sinners,
pero
but the
el
heart
corazón
itself
es bueno.
is good.
Well, I know some authors in the New Testament who might disagree with that assessment, but that's Pope Francis. Okay. Now, that kind of sets up where we're going with Harrison Butker. So he gives a speech at Benedictine College. Now keep in mind, let me set this up, keep this in context. Harrison Butker is a Roman Catholic. Benedictine College is a Roman Catholic college. He's there for the commencement address. Okay? So you have a Roman Catholic speaking to Roman Catholics at a Roman Catholic institution. So I'm going to play part of this clip. It runs about 2 minutes. I don't think I'm going to need to play all of it. I'm going to play the parts of it that I think are probably things that most of y'all have heard. And then I want to get into discussing this a little bit. So do me a favor, and let's listen in to Mr. Butker as he's addressing the graduates of Benedictine College. Check this out.
Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it.
Now, let me back up to something I said a moment ago. Here's a young man who's Roman Catholic. He's speaking to a group of Roman Catholics at a Roman Catholic institution. And I don't know that much about Benedictine College, but Gypsy points out it's a private Catholic college. Fine. And he's giving an address, a commencement address. Okay. Now, you would think that a Roman Catholic individual speaking to a group of Roman Catholics at a Roman Catholic college at a Roman Catholic graduation, this wouldn't be all that controversial, right? Oh, contraire, mon frere. This dude is being vilified everywhere. There are people, and you're pointing this out. I haven't got the story pulled up, but yeah, there's like signatures. There are people wanting him fired over what he said. Now, for my part, I have not a problem with what he said. I mean, I'm Protestant, okay? But I have not a problem with what he said. And even if I didn't agree with him, I wouldn't have a problem with him saying what he said. It's called free speech, you know? I mean, for all y'all out there, and you watch this live stream, daggone you, but you just won't admit it. For all you all lefties and progressives out there that want to hang this guy from a yardarm, okay? Forget it. No. And I'm not necessarily saying that because I agree with what he was saying. Forget it. It's called free speech. You do not get the right to censor him because he says something you don't like, you snowflakes. Get the hell over yourselves. I actually applaud this young man for having the courage of his convictions. I mean, in this society, and as bad as I hate to say this, in this society where we are right now, what that young man was saying is radioactively controversial, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't. And I've got a feeling, and I haven't polled anybody here in the audience, but I'd love to know y'all's reaction to this. So drop in some comments if you want to. Yeah, exactly. Free speech at a non-government funded college. For bleep's sake. Yeah, exactly. I get it. I mean, here's another one. He gave another speech recently. Apparently, where was this? Georgia Institute of Technology. I don't know if y'all saw this one or not, but I'll play a little snippet of this. Check this out.
It is important to use today as an opportunity to take stock of your mission. Our culture is suffering. We all see it. It doesn't matter which political persuasion you sit on or whether you are a person of deep faith or not. Anyone with eyes can see that something is off. Studies have shown one of the many negative effects of the pandemic is that a lot of young adults feel a sense of loneliness, anxiety, and depression, despite technology that has connected us more than ever before. It would seem the more connected people are to one another, the more they feel alone. I'm not sure the root of this, but at least I can offer one controversial antidote that I believe will have a lasting impact for generations to come. Get married and start a family. Wow. I will say this is the most important ring I have right here. Having kicked the game-winning field goal in both the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl, I have received a great deal of praise for these successes. They just announced that this Super Bowl was the most watched football game of all time, and yet all of this happiness is temporary. And the truth is, none of these accomplishments mean anything compared to the happiness I have found in my marriage and in starting a family. My confidence as a husband and father, and yes, even as a football player, is rooted in my marriage with my wife, as we leave our mark on future generations by the children we bring into the world. How much greater of a legacy can anyone leave than that?
Okay, what is this dude saying that's just got everybody bent out of shape? Well, maybe everybody's not the right word, but a significant portion of people. Small time, you might be absolutely right, dude. Maybe we need to start putting a trigger warning on that phrase before people start saying it. This is nuts. Look, I mean, like I said, he's Catholic, I'm Protestant. What we agree on. What is so controversial about what this young man's saying? This is somebody who ought to be applauded. Instead, there are people out there trying to crucify this poor guy. And he's not wrong. I mean, look, whether you're religious, not religious, doesn't matter. You cannot look at the state of American society and come to the conclusion, oh, yeah, we're perfectly healthy. No problems here. I mean, again, I do not get why this young man, well, I do. But, absent that, what is this kid saying that's so controversial? Nothing. He's telling the truth. You may not agree with him, but he's telling the truth. Well, fortunately, there are some people out there that have got his back, not just us. Yeah. Your society sounds charming. Indeed. Indeed. From enews.com, we've got the following. No, we're not talking about Whoopi. Patricia Heaton defends Harrison Butker amid controversial speech backlash. Everybody loves Raymond Starr reacted to the Kansas City Chiefs kicker's commencement address at Benedictine College on May 11th, where he shared his belief that women should be in the home and not the workplace. Quote, I don't know why everybody's knickers are in a twist, Patricia said in a May 18th Instagram video. He gave a commencement speech. The audience applauded twice, gave him a standing ovation at the end, so clearly they enjoyed what he was saying. The guy is espousing his own opinions in Catholic doctrine. So what? It's his opinion. The 66-year-old continued. He can have one. He's allowed. He's not a monster for stating what he believes. Patricia, who is a Catholic woman who worked throughout her kids' childhood, didn't find his statements offensive, even if they don't align with her lifestyle. Quote, I'm just curious as to why people get offended, the Beethoven actress admitted. If you have made choices in your life and you feel those are the right choices and you feel comfortable and they're working out for you and your family, great. If they're different from his, that's great. You do you, he'll do him. The middle star concluded her video, relax everybody. Among other topics discussed in his speech at the private university in Atchison, Kansas, Harrison said that he believed that female students at graduation would be more likely be excited about their marriage and children than their future careers. He also noted that he believes that his wife, Isabel Butker, with whom he shares 2 kids, would say her life truly began when she became a wife and a mother. Wow. Such dangerous heresy. Oh my gosh. Absolutely crazy. One more little reaction to this. This is from the Free Press. Great website, by the way. Check them out. This is an article by Kat Rosenfeld. Harrison Butker is Catholic. So what? This is America. We need to tolerate a Catholic man saying Catholic things at a Catholic university. Butker's speech was very trad and frequently interrupted by the applause, who, rather than being affronted, kept interrupting in cheers and applause. Perhaps they did not realize that this speech by a Catholic kicker at a Catholic university wasn't for them, the Catholic graduating seniors. It was, for me, a 42-year-old woman in New England eating peanut butter straight out of the jar because a sandwich seemed like too much work. Or at least that's what it feels like these days. For now, the story of Butker's speech and subsequent backlash, including a statement of denunciation from the NFL itself, has been the subject of wall-to-wall coverage from the New York Times to People magazine. It's as if the media has set aside the differences in service of a single unified mission to make sure I know this happened and that I'm good and mad at it. Well, fine. I've watched the speech, and true enough, there is little in it I agree with. If Butker broke into my house, tied me to a chair, and forced me to watch the whole thing with my eyelids taped open, Clockwork Orange style, I wouldn't be thrilled. But he didn't do this, and as such, I am far less mad at him than I am the shrieking discourse hall monitors demanding I be outraged by it. Amen, sister. Not only is it hard to imagine a more joyless or fruitless way to spend my limited time on this planet, it's hard to see how Butker's comments differ from the hundreds of thousands of speeches delivered to approving crowds every day in various settings by faith leaders of all stripes. Given the sheer diversity of ideology in this country, there's probably something in there to offend everyone. But this is America. Isn't free speech and assembly, no matter how offensive some might find the ideas involved, kind of what we're here to do? Indeed, the culture of free expression that allowed Butker to speak his mind to an appreciative audience is the same culture that permits me to host weekly discussion salons with my all-female neighborhood watch group, the Kindred Alliance for Rights, Equality, and Nurturing Society, Karens, which for some reason wants to join, but whatever. Exactly. It's called free speech. And Zippy over on Rumble, with a couple of Rumble rants, modern society teaches people how to be fake, not how to communicate. If you cannot communicate, all you can do is fake it, whatever it is. Faking it leads to denial. Denial leads to insanity. One more Rumble rant. I made a Meanwhile video of my Mittens Romney Photoshop, and he leaves a link there. So if you're on Rumble, check that out. Zippy is absolutely a very talented young fellow. I'm glad to have him here on the channel. Joe says on Rumble, the people trashing Butker are the same ones who praise Hamas. Exactly. I mean, we'll keep an eye on this. I mean, just for the fun of it, because this to me is nuts. I mean, the reaction this poor young man is getting just simply for saying, hey, here's some things that we ought to think about, and think about them more often than we do. So, hats off to you, young man, or hat tip. So there you go. If you want to come on here and chat, be happy to have you on sometime, young guy. Anywho, so that's pretty much everything I've got for this session's evening of Chatting on the Porch. I want to give an announcement because Thursday night we're going to do something fun, and I want to go ahead and get you guys geared up for it. 6 o'clock this Thursday evening, we're going to be having a group discussion here on the channel. I've already got commitments from 4 absolutely fantastic folks. They've been on this channel before. And what we're going to be talking about is something that's coming up in the near future, and I want to get their take on the whole thing. So this Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be doing a Pride Month preview with Mike Harlow, Daniel, and Brentley from Dangerous Rhetoric and Gothics. They're all 4 coming back to the Electronic Front Porch. They will be here this Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. I am dying to get into this topic with them. So please put it on your calendars. This Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to check this all out. So we'll all be talking about this and seeing what's coming up. So please have this one. Be ready. This is going to be a load of fun to get into, especially with this bunch. Absolutely looking forward to it. Now, we will be back tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern, talking about more of what's going on in the news. I've got some stories I didn't get to tonight, and that's okay. But I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping by. Even if it was just for a few minutes, I genuinely appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Hit the thumbs up on your way out off the porch. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Oh, D-Day Cobra is live right now. Well, go raid him. Yes, go raid. Anyway, y'all are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Hit the thumbs up button on YouTube and Rumble. And remember, as we depart, those words from the great American philosopher Tom T. Hall: it's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7:30.